We already knew the San Francisco 49ers were in the divisional round. We know their opponent now Saturday night, the Green Bay Packers, and we know the rest of the divisional round slate, the best round of playoff football every year coming up this weekend, and a whole lot more coming up right now on this episode of Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker with you as always at BD Peacock, at Eric at Crocky 209 now back in California on the Twitters. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Our very special guest coming up in just a moment. But I want to thank all of the everydayers out there first and let you know that today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Jace Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jace case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50-plus infections. Get yours today at jacemedical.com and use code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. That's JASE medical.com. And now let's bring on today's guest.
I don't buy it.
We do ask that you dump your trash on the
wrong
way out.
button. Here we go.
Nicholas
So
Winkler.
started.
On down.
I got him color-coded and I was on the wrong page.
Wow. Can't believe it.
Oh, man. Wink. By the way, Nicholas Winkler, our guest on Winky Wednesdays here on Locked On 49ers, my former podcast co-host back in the day on a different podcast before I took over Locked On 49ers. 49ers fan. He's the voice of the fan, my former radio colleague as well. We used to report on traffic together. Now we report on the San Francisco 49ers. Wink, how broken up were you to watch the losses of the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles this weekend in the wild card round of the playoffs?
Not only did I feel so bad for the players, I felt so bad for the fans. They're so classy and they're always so into it and like supportive of the teams that they play that I felt really bad that they had to lose and slam and break televisions and cry. And it felt really bad for me. Oh my gosh, what an awesome weekend. They both go out in the open. I mean, the only way it could have been better is if the Packers lost also, but now we have a chance to put them out this weekend. So let's go. Great round of football.
You see the Eagles fan that was in Tampa that tossed popcorn on Sirianni as he walked into the tunnel? That's making his rounds on Tuesday morning. Yeah, it's making his rounds on Tuesday around the internet. Class act. At least it wasn't a bucket full of batteries, so that's one thing. But man, a collapse like I've never seen. Me and Croc talked about this a little bit yesterday. Do you blame the 49ers for breaking the Eagles? They were 1-6 after that. What was it? 42-19 was the final in that one. And they could barely win a game. They barely beat their division rival Giants and then lost that same team Giants a couple of weeks after that. And then were ousted very easily by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the first round of the playoffs.
I mean, you're talking about a team that was 10-1, right? Atop the NFL, just sitting there like
nobody. Number one on
us.
everybody's list in the power rankings. And people were questioning. It was like, I don't know, 49ers, are they really that good? Can they go into Philadelphia and beat the Eagles? And the Eagles have looked like a bottom tier team, a bottom third of the NFL team since then.
And they're going to have to restart, right? And now that the season's over, like they got a lot of high-priced free agents. Guys are going to retire. Kelsey already announced that he's probably going to retire. And they're talking about firing Sirianni, a guy that took him to the playoffs 3 years in a row, that went to the Super Bowl last year. Like Philadelphia is in disarray right now. And I kind of love it.
Croc, would you have rather faced the Eagles or the Cowboys in the NFC Championship game? Not necessarily because of the matchup, but just because it'd have been more fun maybe than who the Niners might play if they do get to the NFC Championship game?
Yeah, you know, in the playoffs, you want to see kind of the best of the best go at it. And clearly, I guess maybe the best is not Philadelphia or Dallas Cowboys. But I think just the storyline behind those games, if you're talking about ratings, I mean, you would pull massive ratings if you get a rematch of last year's NFC Championship game, or if you get the Dallas Cowboys, you know, coming to town and with those massive ratings, because people really want to see that. So I would have rather preferred the 49ers beat up and dominate one of those teams just so we could see what potentially would be like kind of a better buildup than the Packers. And this is not a slight at the Packers. We know they're kind of young and kind of this reloading thing. You know, there is no more Aaron Rodgers. You have a young guy taking over now with Jordan Love. And, you know, I am excited to watch like the young players and what they look like and continue to watch them moving forward. But I definitely would have been a little bit more hyped, a little bit more amped up, pumped up to watch 49ers versus Dallas or Philadelphia.
Did you guys see the old tweets that have been brought up from Jared Goff? He's a Bay Area guy, and there's a series of tweets I saw that were really funny. They're from like 2013, and it was like, man, I'm super pumped. I'm going to go see the last game of the 49ers at Candlestick Park. And someone's like, oh, you a Niners fan? And he's like, of course I'm a 49ers fan. So just get ready for those old tweets to be brought back up if it is the Lions and the 49ers that win and are facing off in the NFC Championship game. But this is the best weekend of football, I think, as far as the playoffs go, because it's funny. Going into it, you think, oh, man, probably the best opponent for the 49ers is maybe a more youthful offense and an upstart team like the Green Bay Packers offensively that have had their struggles defensively. That's probably the best matchup for the 49ers. And then you watch the games happen, and then you say, oh, man, I would probably rather play the teams that lost than the teams that won, because the teams that won look a lot better. So at this point, I'd rather play the Cowboys or the Eagles than the way the Buccaneers looked and the way the Packers looked.
Yeah, Jordan Love's playing at a high level right now. Aaron Jones missed a bunch of time. He looked fresh. He looked like he was explosive there. So that Packers offense definitely worries you a little bit. You look at the numbers that Love put up this year. I mean, they're almost identical to what Brock Purdy put up, right? I mean, he did it in a lot more attempts. It was like 130 plus attempts more than Brock Purdy, but the yardage was almost the same. Touchdowns, interceptions, everything was just, square with Purdy. So that's a great year for Love.
Yeah, it was up and down season. The efficiency got a lot better in the second half of the year too, and it was even more like what Brock Purdy's numbers ended up looking like.
I think it's going to be just awesome to watch the kind of the chess match between these two head coaches. And, we're not talking a whole lot about that, but LaFleur versus Shanahan. We've seen it a couple of times now in the postseason. We've seen it in the regular season. And more times than not, it's kind of been the 49ers getting the better of them outside of, remember one game in particular where 49ers were missing like half their game season, or half of their team during the COVID season. But outside of 49ers and Kyle Shanahan, he's kind of gotten the better of LaFleur. And it almost feels like there's this unspoken kind of bitterness, especially if you go back to the storyline about the whole draft day thing and calling about Aaron Rodgers and how LaFleur felt about that. So watching those two guys and how they interact or maybe don't interact, that's going to be something to kind of look out for.
Looking at where the Packers are strong and where the 49ers are strong, and looking at weaknesses, and the 49ers don't have a ton of weaknesses, and they're top 5 in the league and in offensive and defensive DVOA. The Packers have clear strengths and weaknesses, and their offense is playing at a really good level, even though it's a young offense. It's obviously well coached by Matt LaFleur. Their offensive DOA, the Packers, the best defense in the playoffs that the 49ers could have faced between the Bucs, Eagles, Rams, and Packers in the divisional round. The Packers are the number 3 offensive DVOA team, but defensively just not good. 28 in the NFL. And I think this is going to be reminiscent of, and it's not because Kyle Shanahan's going to avoid Brock Purdy, but this could be reminiscent of a game we saw a couple of years ago when Jimmy G was the quarterback of the 49ers, where it is all Christian McCaffrey. Like the Packers are going to have to prove they can stop the 49ers run game. And if not, I think it's just going to be play after play. McCaffrey behind Trent, going the other way, bringing in Elijah Mitchell, little Debo wide back stuff. I think they're going to run the heck out of the ball and make the Packers prove that they can stop the run. And I thought it was interesting the way the Packers played defense against Dak, because they were like, oh, we're going to try to jump in front of everything. And so they could give up some big plays if they're going all out to try to get their hands on the football as well. So it'll be an interesting chess match for sure.
I have a buddy of mine, my guy Chris, and he sent me a text message talking about the Packers run defense. And he said, these are just some of the yardage that they've given up in games this year. 122 yards, 211 yards, 145 yards, 205 yards, 150, 140, 148, 209, And we're not talking about Stockton there. We're talking about rushing yards. So they have shown that they can be very suspect against the run. We're not talking about a one-off game or maybe it happening twice where, okay, we give up a decent amount of yards on the ground. We're talking about 4 games over 200 rushing yards by, that the Packers gave up on the ground. And then you play a 49er team that wants to run the rock. They want to pound the rock. And if you allow them to run 200, hell, if you're allowing them to run 400, they will continue to run the ball. The Packers have definitely experienced that already in the NFC Championship game. And if there's one area that can really kind of make it a little bit more difficult on the young guys on offense with Green Bay, it's the 49ers being able to run the ball, have success, ball control, score points. That'll put an immense amount of pressure on a very young team with the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, I think you said it. The ball control is so important and just taking care of the football too, because to me, I feel like the only way the 49ers lose this game is if they find a way early to like turn the ball over, right? And then Green Bay gets up, because the 49ers have shown that if they trail in the fourth quarter, they're not going to win that football game. So I think it's important for the 49ers to control the tempo, control the ball, control the line of scrimmage on both sides. I mean, they're probably going to get Eric Armstead back too, which to me would be a huge boost for this 49ers defense. So if they can control both lines, this is going to be a great game for the 49ers.
Niners looking good to be very healthy going into this matchup, and we'll get into the injury reports later in the week. Next, I want to talk a little bit about what are the scariest teams left in the playoffs, both NFC and AFC side. Look a little bit more at the divisional round with some of the other games, and then Brandon Aiyuk, his goals this season and his future goals, and if they line up with the San Francisco 49ers. Next. Today's episode of Locked Up 49ers is brought to you by BetterHelp Online Therapy. Sometimes we need the opportunity to get something off our chest. We all need it, big or small. Certain things can really start to get to you, and you let them fester. And it's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased in your life. So today, I want to say how I really feel about something. You might even be thinking about the same thing this week, right? Maybe it's maybe it's playoff football, right? And you get all nervous about it, and you just get all worked up about some things in your life. Sometimes you got to let loose and let it happen and let it out. And that's why you come here to Lock On 49ers. We're that therapy for you when it comes to football, but you need to see a professional when it comes to some of the more important things in your life. And that's where BetterHelp comes in. If you've ever thought about giving therapy a try BetterHelp. Identify topics that get you authentically upset, sad, or excited. You build some of the strengths to help yourself and avoid those things that happen in your life. So therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports team. If you're thinking about starting therapy, try BetterHelp. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Today's episode is also brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers at PrizePicks instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks in the pool. It's just you against the numbers. You look at the PrizePicks stat projections. You pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch those winnings roll in. Turn $10 into $250, winning up to 25 times your money this football season and these playoffs at PrizePicks. Withdrawals are quick, easy gameplay, enormous selection of players and stat types are what make PrizePicks the #1 daily fantasy sports app, not just NFL either. We're talking NBA. You can do NBA, NFL combo picks as well at PrizePicks. It is a whole lot of fun, and it couldn't be easier. And make yourself a little scratch at the same time. Just go to PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the app or go to PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, let's look at these matchups for the divisional round of the playoffs. And I'm super excited for these. Obviously, we know the 49ers are hosting the Packers Saturday night. The early game Saturday, the divisional round will kick off with CJ Stroud, DeMeco Ryans, the Houston Texans on the road at the Baltimore Ravens, and then on Sunday, it'll be Buccaneers at Lions in the early game and the Chiefs at Bills, which will be a whole lot of fun with Mahomes and Josh Allen, if that's the type of game we've seen from them in the playoffs in the past. Guys, I'll start with you, Croc. Which team, whether it's all the way into the Super Bowl on the AFC side, on the NFC side for the 49ers, of these teams left, seeing how they played in the regular season, seeing how they played in the wild card round, which one of these teams do you think is the scariest team out there, non-49ers edition?
If you were talking about prior to the wild card round, I would have said, man, maybe like the Cleveland Browns, right? Like that's the team that beat the 49ers, had their third street quarterback, and it's almost like they just got stronger. They got Joe Flacco. He's throwing the ball around, playing extremely well over the last, 4 weeks, and then boom, they get bounced out by Houston Texans. I think there's two ways to answer this. One, a scary team can be a team that feels like they have nothing to lose, right? And that could be the Houston Texans, that could be the Green Bay Packers, where it's like, hey, we're playing with house money, and we're going to go all out, and we'll just see what happens. Like, that team is scary to play because it's almost like they don't know any better. But if I'm just saying, like, team, players, what I would be most scared of, it has not changed. I think it is the Kansas City Chiefs on that side of the ball. And they just they played a really good game in really bad, inclement weather. We know that they can travel and play any type of way. But as long as Patrick Mahomes is playing, I mean, this is a guy that played with half of his helmet missing after taking a big hit in that game. Did not matter. He's making throws and throwing the ball like it's 70 degrees out there. Obviously, the Super Bowl will be played in good weather. But man, they're starting to click. The run game is working. Pacheco running really hard. You got Rice. Now he's being able to kind of be paired very well with Travis Kelce, and that was a big thing, right? Like, who's going to be the pass catcher that emerges outside of Kelce? Rice said, you know what? I'll answer that, Bill. The defense is playing well. Mahomes. That is a scary team right there. Of course, the easy answer is Baltimore, but even then, the team that has been there, done that, and they're just always in the mix, Kansas City Chiefs. I think that's the scariest team in the NFL outside of the 49ers right now.
Yeah, I think that if you ask another team, this answer, it's the 49ers. But I think you're right. I think if you really break down the remaining 7 teams other than the 49ers, I think that the top 3 scariest teams are all in the AFC right now. I think it's Baltimore. I think it's Kansas City. I think it's Buffalo. I mean, you're looking at 3 teams that just can go out and put up a ton of points. And when it comes to Baltimore, they can also shut you down on defense. Kansas City defense has been fantastic all year long as well. But you talk about the house money. I mean, right now the Texans are playing with house money, right? You talk about having all the rookies they didn't expect to be here. They're in there. The Packers playing with house money. And the Bucks, when you got a guy like Mike Evans that can kind of take the top off of defense at any time and score, they can score points very quickly with a guy like that. So that's a scary team too. And then you got a Lions team who's got the heart and passion of Dan Campbell and that city of Detroit, and they got Eminem behind them. Like, every team right now is scary in the NFL. I got asked the other day, I was like, oh, are you scared for the Packers? I'm like, well, yeah, I'm scared. They're playing a football game, right? Against my team. Like, of course I'm scared. I'm confident, but I'm also smart enough to know that it's football and anybody can win any given Saturday or Sunday.
Who's got the best local rapper that is supporting their team on game day? I think that's how it'll all be decided in the end. Spagnuolo, the defense coordinator for the Chiefs, doesn't get enough credit for the job he's done with the Chiefs because they haven't been the offensive juggernaut this year that they've been in years past, and they've leaned a lot on their defense. But it is scary to see how Tua didn't perform in the same weather as Patrick Mahomes, and Mahomes didn't really have too much of a problem. And we're getting into it, and there's a lot of really good quarterback play with these 8 teams that are left in the playoffs. And it's going to come down to big-time quarterbacks making big-time plays a lot of times. Even when you think that team is out of it, all of a sudden here comes haymakers from Josh Allen, right? And you can put up points very quickly. So those teams with the big-time quarterbacks are still the teams that that worry me the most if I'm playing. I don't want to play the Ravens, who can play good defense against you, who can run. And then you got Lamar Jackson, who's just really difficult to play against. The way CJ Stroud's playing, when teams arrive, they arrive instantly. Remember the 49ers in 2019? They had the 2nd pick in the draft. And they're like, nope, we're not that team anymore. We're a Super Bowl team now. And they've been that team ever since, injuries aside. And they're probably even better than that this year, mostly because of the quarterback play. the Texans are not to be trifled with. Like they're a legit team and they're playing with confidence and they're just getting high. Like CJ Stroud is good. Period. The incubation time was unnecessary. It's pretty amazing what's happening there. And to see him do it against the Jim Schwartz defense, because remember, Jim Schwartz thing is like, I'm great against Shanahan style offenses. So Bobby Slowick goes over there with CJ Stroud and says, nope, sorry, Jim Schwartz. It's not happening today against us. We're different, So I don't know if it's just a Kyle Shanahan thing or those teams in the AFC side, I might rank them all top to bottom ahead of anybody else in the NFC.
I think the Buffalo team, I think that was just watching them. Josh Allen, he can do some weird things. He didn't turn the ball over in this game. He's liable to kind of do that in the game. And I was kind of waiting for that moment where he does turn it over. But when he is on, you just get reminded about how he is on a different level than a lot of other guys. And whether it's him using his arm and some of the throws he's able to make effortlessly, again, in bad weather, like we saw Mahomes do, or his legs and take off and have a 50-yard touchdown run, which he did like this Fred Flintstone choppy step thing. And I don't know if the defender thought he was preparing to slide.
I think so.
Clearly he didn't. And then he just kind of ran through the defense and ran into the end zone. Just the threat of him being able to utilize his legs with how powerful and talented of an arm he has, he makes him difficult. And like Kansas City Chiefs, sometimes the defenses get overshadowed because of who they have at quarterback. But Buffalo's defense has been playing very, very well down the stretch as well. Not like they were great all year, but definitely the last month or so, they're playing defense at a very high level.
I want to talk next, guys, about a 49ers X factor. That is wide receiver Brandon Aiyuk coming up. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Jace Medical and the Jace Case. And I know we come to talk sports, and that is an escape from the crazy realities of real life most of the time. But just for a minute, let's prepare for real life here. And according to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin. And you might need a certain medication for you or your family that supply chain issues keep you from, or we've been through pandemics, right? We've been through natural disasters and those things can happen. And of course you might be traveling with your family and just away, and you want to be prepared for certain situations that could arise for yourself and your family and have specific needs that are covered in your Jace Case. The Jace Case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, UTIs, skin infections, respiratory infections, 50 plus ailments. And all you got to do is visit jacemedical.com and complete your physician review, a board certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. And all you got to do is go to jacemedical.com and use offer code Locked On to get $20 off your order. Again, that is Jace Medical, JASE medical.com. Brandon Aiyuk. Okay, the story I saw was that Brandon Aiyuk had some certain goals this year, and I had problems finding exactly what the interview was that Brandon Aiyuk said he didn't quite meet the goals he had for this season. But I'm going to go back to preseason, and here are the goals that Brandon Aiyuk told Richard Sherman that his goals were in July going into this season. And he was asked about Pro Bowls or All-Pro honors for the 25-year-old wide receiver. And Aiyuk told Sherman this, quote, "That's my expectation. Of course, that's my expectation. But really, I just want to maximize. I'm still thinking about some plays I left out there last season. Like you said, I had my first 1,000-yard season, but I left a bunch of plays out there. So I'm just trying to maximize. If I can maximize every play that I get, that's the goal for me. And we'll see where that all takes me. But I feel like I have at least 3 or 4 more touchdowns out there and 200 to 300 more yards out there." Well, he accomplished that. He found those yards this season. So good on Aiyuk. To me, I feel like he did reach his goals. He did mention that winning a Super Bowl is one of his goals. So maybe that's what he meant by not reaching his goals yet. Croc, what do you see in Brandon Aiyuk this year? And there's obviously some big conversations to come about what the future is and how the 49ers fit everybody under the salary cap when you're already paying Deebo Samuel.
I think when it comes to San Francisco 49er fans, we focus on team first. Like, what is best for the team? Best thing for the team is him understanding his role and how important he is to this team, but how he kind of fits as a piece to this puzzle and how he's maybe able to be more productive off of that, right? So that's like our perspective and how he's going to help the 49ers potentially hoist Lombardi this year and for years to come. But if you're talking about from Aiyuk's standpoint, it's whatever belief he has in himself. And that is one of a guy who, said earlier this year, hey, I was a 1,000-yard receiver as a fourth option. Like that lets me know right there he knows and is very aware of if I'm the first option with my ability and things I'm able to do, how much more productive would I be? Well, this year we got to see when they started to utilize them even a little bit more, right? Just within the context of this offense, you still run heavy. You're still going to get the ball to Christian McCaffrey. You're going to throw the ball to CMC. You're going to give dump offs to Debo and Kittle as a 1,000-yard receiver. Oh, and by the way, I'm still going to have 1,300 yards. And if I had to guess, Brandon, I could tell you a personal goal of mine isn't just 1,300 yards. It might be, hey, I want to be regarded as the best receiver in the NFL. And as we're talking about contracts and how that might play out, a guy from his same class, CeeDee Lamb, had a terrific year this season, 1,700 yards, a bunch more targets than Aiyuk. Aiyuk led the league in receiving yards per catch. But I bet if you ask Aiyuk, he'd say, I'm just as good, if not better than CeeDee Lamb. That's probably how he feels. And the 49ers are going to use negotiation tactics to say, well, this is your production and this is what it says you are. And so we're going to pay you according to this. And I'm interested to see come this offseason. I know they're not focused on it right now. And Aiyuk said he's not, hey, focus on this. They're talking to my agent about contract extensions. I'm not answering their phone calls right now. But I do think that could be something that they kind of get hung up on because there is so much more in him that we're not even aware of. A 1,300-yard season to us is amazing, but to him, it's like, man, I'm just scratching the surface. If I was targeted like Amon-Ra St. Brown, if I was targeted like CeeDee Lamb, if I was targeted like Tyreek Hill, hell, I could be a 1,700-yard receiver and be regarded as one of the best and be paid as literally one of the top 3 best in the NFL, which if they had to give him a contract right now or come this offseason, I don't think he'd sniff the money that CeeDee Lamb is going to make. And I think that's going to be a big conversation come this offseason.
Well, I think you say that he won't get that. He wouldn't get it from the 49ers, but knowing how other teams overpay to bring in free agent wide receivers, like if he hits the free agent market, he's going to make so much money because we've seen teams year and year. You're like, how much did they give Christian Kirk? Like, are you kidding me? Like the amount of money they're going to give a guy like Brandon Aiyuk, I mean, it could be astronomical. So hopefully the 49ers do find a way to kind of be like, hey, listen to what we're saying, but if you're Brandon Aiyuk, why would you settle for less? Why would you settle for this small amount when, like you said, Croc, I think you're right. I think he does see himself as one of the best wide receivers in the NFL because he's playing like it. I mean, he's open. He makes all the catches. He's kind of like Brock Purdy's emergency, right? He looks around. Oh, there's Aiyuk. I know I've got Aiyuk. And it seems like time and time again, that's the guy that he leans on when he's in trouble. And I know Aiyuk thinks he's at the top of the league because he's playing like it all season long.
They don't utilize him like some of these other guys. And now we are kind of jumping the gun. Well,
You're
not
right.
just the first option. When it comes to, and I was going to say, we're kind of jumping the gun. He does have a 5th-year option. So It's not like they just 100% have to pay him right now come this offseason, but it will be a conversation. But just if we're talking about his usage, how much do they motion him? If you watch a Dallas Cowboy game and you watch CeeDee Lamb, they're motioning him to, the slot or into a stack where you can't get hands on him, where he gets free releases, where he gets matched up against your nickel corner, where he gets matched up against a safety in space, running through zones. They do so much with them where Aiyuk is more utilized as a stationary guy. And they will motion him here and there, but a lot of times it's not him that's in motion. So he really just has to win his matchups on just his pure talent alone, as opposed to the scheming, not in the sense of the route, but the scheming in the sense of freeing him up in space. So I'm curious to see how it ends up, kind of all playing out. But I bet you he would tell you, man, I would love for them to motion me into a slot, tight, into a stack, get a free release. Now I'm matched up against a linebacker, get to catch the ball, more targets, 50 more targets, because that's what these guys are kind of getting. And then, hey, what would my yardage, what would my production be? Would I still be a Pro Bowl snub? Would I still only be second team? I think I'd be first team. I think I'd be Pro Bowl. I think I'd be highest paid player in the league. I think that conversation that was just had in the little interview and the questions they were asking, he kept a straight face and kept it kind of monotone. But I think he kind of was alluding to that a little bit.
He always keeps it pretty monotone. Brandon Aiyuk. I like Brandon Aiyuk, and I like how he's grown as a player on and off the field too. It's been fun to watch his development as a 49er. And yeah, I mean, you got to feel for Brandon Aiyuk too, because he's probably sitting there thinking, well, look, if I'm going to be a 1,000-yard receiver in the fourth option, am I going to be a 4,000-yard receiver when I'm the first option? Like how many more yards? 50 targets? That's crazy. You're talking about, another 50% more target share for a wide receiver. You could put up crazy numbers in that regard. So is that something he's going to look forward to? And I think the thing to watch this offseason is free agent wide receiver from the Bengals, T. Higgins. See what he gets, and whether it's with the Bengals or with somebody else. And he was the second-round pick in that draft, so he didn't have the fifth-year option. So he's a true free agent coming up this offseason, whereas Brandon Aiyuk does have the fifth-year option. See what that money is, and Brandon Ayuk's agent and say, I want a little bit more than what T. Higgins just got because I'm next. And those guys, I think, are probably regarded similarly around the NFL. And both those guys probably could be ones for some teams, and they aren't right now on their current teams.
Michael Pittman, another guy from that class who will be looking to get paid. And he was the main guy for the Colts this year, and he's put up solid numbers. Justin Jefferson, has he been paid yet? Because he's on that docket as well of a guy that's looking to get paid. So a really good receiver class. And if I had to guess, Brandon Aiyuk feels like in a situation like these guys where quarterbacks throwing the ball all around and they have all these opportunities, I probably think he'd be just as productive, if not more than them.
I will say, though, 2025 is really the time when you have to start looking at where Aiyuk, Debo, probably they got to figure out one or the other, because Debo Samuel's contract, his 3-year deal, it actually just started this year. So he's still signed through 2024, 2025 on that 3-year extension, and the money jumps in 2024. But if the 49ers re-up Brandon Aiyuk, they could actually bring his fifth-year option number down and make it easier to keep them together in 2024. But then you're not going to pay $40-50 million for two receivers in 2025. So at that point, you might have to trade Debo before the last year of his contract, or maybe they're able to work it out this year. Then they make that 2025 number low for Aiyuk and then let Debo hit free agency after 2025. But I don't think anything's going to happen unless Aiyuk shows up this offseason and says, I'm not showing up, does the whole trade me thing to try to maximize money this offseason, and that could get dicey for the 49ers. But if that doesn't happen, I think the 49ers can find a way to at least keep those two guys around for another year together, maybe 2 more years together. But long term, if Aiyuk signs a big deal, Debo's not going to do another deal. I think that's the best way to look at it. And what would Aiyuk do? And teams are going to look. Adam Peters, right? He's over there in Washington. Would he say, man, I like Brian Aiyuk even more than Terry McLaurin? Would they try to swing some offers? Someone was asking me, hey, what if they offer the second pick in the draft for Brock Purdy? And I was like, man, I'd seriously consider that. And people are like, are you crazy? Are you insane? Kyle Shanahan would probably say no, though. But then Bobby Slowick, does he get a head coach job somewhere? He's going to say, I need my Brandon Aiyuk in Tennessee or whatever, Would he come with some big time offers? So it's going to be a fascinating offseason, but the offseason's a ways away, hopefully. The Green Bay Packers, that is now the focus for the 49ers. We've got Peter Bukowski, Locked On 49ers, Locked On Packers, crossover episode tomorrow. And of course, Croc and I always finish the week with a live episode, Keys to Victory. We'll be breaking down a lot of Green Bay Packers, 49ers the rest of the week. Wink, appreciate you joining us here. As always, thanks to all the everydayers out there. Croc and I back tomorrow right here. Locked On 49ers.
See you.
DeWink is on fire.
Can't believe it.